Disclaimer: this is a fictional dramatization created for artistic, emotional, and educational storytelling purposes. All characters and events are entirely fictional and created using AI tools. No impersonation, misrepresentation, or harm is intended. The content contains scenes of danger involving child characters. However, no real persons or minors were involved in its production. Grace's Love Stories produces scripted, AI-generated stories that promote, entertain, inspire kindness, and emotional connection. We respect our viewers and strictly adhere to YouTube's policies.
The lace itched. I stood in the bridal suite of the Rosewood Hotel, staring at my reflection in the gilt-edged mirror, and all I could think about was how the delicate French lace at my collar scratched against my throat like tiny claws. The dress was exquisite, everyone had said so. Ivory silk that cascaded in careful waves, a bodice embroidered with seed pearls that had taken some artisan in Milan 3 months to complete. My blonde hair had been swept into an elaborate updo, tiny white roses tucked between the braids. I looked like a bride from a magazine. I looked nothing like myself. "You're so lucky," my cousin Emma had whispered that morning, adjusting my veil with reverent fingers. "Damien Rothschild, every woman in the city would kill to be you right now. Lucky." The words sat heavy in my stomach, sour and wrong. Outside, I could hear the string quartet playing Pachelbel's Canon, the same song that had been played at 1,000 weddings before mine. Through the window, I watched guests arriving in their expensive cars, designer dresses in jewel tones, men in tailored suits. The Rothschild family had spared no expense. The garden had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, white roses everywhere, silk ribbons streaming from ancient oak trees, a white carpet leading to an arch dripping with peonies and orchids. It was perfect. All of it was perfect, except for the small, persistent voice in my head that whispered, "This is wrong." My phone buzzed on the vanity. Another message from my mother. "Don't forget to smile, darling. You always look stern when you're nervous. Remember what your grandmother used to say. Grace under pressure." My grandmother. I touched the simple gold locket at my throat, hidden beneath all the lace and pearls. It had been hers, the only piece of jewelry I'd insisted on wearing. Inside was a tiny photograph of her, and on the back, engraved in her own handwriting, "Trust the quiet voice." She'd given it to me before she died, when I was 16. "The world will be loud, Stella," she'd said, her papery hand clasping mine. "Everyone will tell you who to be, what to want, how to live. But there's a quiet voice inside you that knows the truth. Promise me you'll listen to it." I'd promised. And then I'd spent the next 8 years ignoring that voice, drowning it out with should and must and expected. A knock at the door made me jump. "5 minutes, Miss Stella," the wedding coordinator called, her voice bright and efficient. 5 minutes until I walked down that aisle. 5 minutes until I promised forever to a man who made me feel like a beautiful decoration. Treasured, but not quite real. Damien was handsome, successful, from the right family. He'd courted me with expensive restaurants and thoughtful gifts. He'd never raised his voice, never been anything but the perfect gentleman. He'd also never asked me what I dreamed about, never wanted to know what scared me or what made me laugh until my stomach hurt. In 6 months of engagement, he'd kissed me exactly 14 times, each one feeling like a performance, a box to check. I picked up my bouquet, white roses and stephanotis, so fragrant they made my eyes water. My hands trembled. Trust the quiet voice. The door opened. Emma appeared, radiant in her bridesmaid dress. "Oh, Stella, you look like a princess. Are you ready? Everyone's waiting." Everyone was waiting. 300 guests, the society photographers, Damien's parents, who'd finally deemed me acceptable after a thorough investigation of my family lineage, my own parents, who'd been planning this wedding since I was born, who saw Damien as the culmination of every careful choice they'd made. The right schools, the right friends, the right image. "I need a moment," I heard myself say. "Just one more moment." Emma's smile faltered slightly. "Stella, we can't delay. The schedule. One moment." My voice came out sharper than I'd intended. She hesitated, then nodded and backed out, closing the door softly. I stood there in my perfect dress, in that beautiful room, and felt something crack open inside my chest. The quiet voice wasn't quiet anymore. It was screaming, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong." My grandmother's face flashed through my mind. The way she'd lived, not perfectly, not according to anyone's plan. She'd been a gardener, an artist, a woman who'd chosen love over comfort, adventure over security. She'd been messy and wild and fully, completely alive. "I can't do this," I whispered to my reflection, and then louder. "I can't do this." The bouquet fell from my hands, white petals scattering across the Persian rug. I grabbed my phone, my purse. Not the delicate beaded clutch that matched the dress, but my actual purse, shoved in the back of the closet. My hands shook as I kicked off the satin heels and found the flat sandals I'd worn to the hotel. I could hear voices in the hallway now. "We need to start. Where is she?" The window. The bridal suite was on the ground floor, opening onto a side garden away from the ceremony. I'd noticed it that morning, had thought absently that it would be a good emergency exit. I hadn't realized I'd need it. The lace tore as I climbed through. I heard the delicate sound of threads giving way, felt the cool air on my skin. Part of me was horrified at destroying something so expensive, so painstakingly made, but a larger part of me felt suddenly, gloriously free. I ran. Not gracefully, not like a bride in a movie. I ran awkwardly, the heavy skirt tangling in my legs, my elaborate hairdo coming undone, white roses falling like snow behind me. I ran past the perfectly manicured gardens, past the arriving guests, past everything that was supposed to be my future. My car. Thank God I'd driven myself to the hotel that morning, had insisted on that one small independence. The keys were in my purse. I threw myself into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot just as I heard someone shouting my name. I didn't look back. I drove. East. Away from the city. Away from the carefully constructed life that had been suffocating me. My phone exploded with calls, messages. I turned it off. The wedding dress bunched around me, ridiculous in the small car. I didn't care. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. I drove until the expensive suburbs gave way to farmland, until the manicured lawns became wild meadows. I drove until my hands stopped shaking and my breath came easier. I drove until I reached Havenbrook. The town appeared like something from another century. A main street with brick buildings, a town square with an actual gazebo, mountains rising in the distance. My grandmother had owned a cottage here, a place she'd escaped to every summer. She'd left it to me in her will. I'd never visited. My parents had discouraged it, called it a waste, too rustic, too isolated. It was perfect. The cottage sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by overgrown gardens and ancient trees. Roses ran wild over the white picket fence. The porch sagged slightly, the paint was peeling. I loved it instantly. I parked and sat there for a moment, my torn wedding dress now streaked with road dust, my hair a disaster of fallen roses and broken pins. Then I started laughing, deep gasping laughs that turned into sobs, then back into laughter. I was free. The cottage smelled like dust and old wood and dried lavender. My grandmother's scent. I found sheets in a cedar chest, made up the bed, found candles, lit them as darkness fell. There was no food, but I wasn't hungry. I was too full of relief, of terror, of possibility. I stood on the porch as stars emerged, still wearing the ruined wedding dress, and felt the quiet voice inside me finally at peace. I didn't think about what I'd left behind. I didn't think about the chaos, the shame, the disappointment. I didn't think about Damien standing at the altar, or my mother's face, or the gossip that would consume the city. I thought only, I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. The forest beyond the cottage was dark and deep. Somewhere in that darkness I heard a wolf howl, long and lonely and somehow beautiful. I should have been afraid. Instead, I smiled. The morning sun woke me, streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover. For a confused moment, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling was wrong, the light was wrong. Everything smelled like lavender and old wood instead of my usual vanilla candles and expensive linen spray. Then I remembered. I sat up too quickly, my head spinning. The wedding dress lay in a crumpled heap on the floor where I'd finally managed to wrestle myself out of it sometime around midnight. In the daylight, it looked even more pathetic. Torn lace, dirt stains along the hem, a few surviving pearls catching the light like tiny accusations. My phone. I'd turned it off, but now my hands moved toward my purse almost automatically. The familiar weight of obligation, of needing to explain, to apologize, to fix what I'd broken. No, I left the phone where it was. Instead, I explored the cottage properly. 2 bedrooms. One had been my grandmother's, still containing her clothes in the closet, her books on the nightstand. The other, smaller room held a single bed and walls painted the pale blue of a robin's egg. My room, from childhood visits, I barely remembered. There was a bathroom with an ancient clawfoot tub, a kitchen with cheerful yellow curtains and outdated appliances, a living room with a stone fireplace and shelves overflowing with books. It was small. It was shabby. It was nothing like the sterile perfection of the apartment I'd shared with Damien, where everything matched and nothing was ever out of place. It felt like coming home. I found one of my grandmother's old dresses in the closet, a simple cotton thing in faded blue, probably 30 years old. It fit well enough. I braided my blonde hair back, splashed water on my face, and ventured into town. Havenbrook on a Sunday morning was sleepy and peaceful. The bakery was open. Warm smells of bread and coffee drifting onto the street. I bought supplies. Coffee, eggs, bread, cheese, apples. The woman behind the counter was perhaps 60, with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands. "You're Eleanor's granddaughter," she said. Not a question. "I heard you'd inherited the cottage. I'm Margaret. Your grandmother and I were friends." The certainty in her voice made something tight in my chest loosen slightly. Here, I wasn't the runaway bride. I wasn't Stella Ashford who'd humiliated the Rothschild family. I was just Eleanor's granddaughter. "I'm Stella," I said. "I know, honey." Margaret smiled. "Eleanor talked about you all the time. Said you had her spirit, even though the world was trying to squeeze it out of you." She handed me the bag of groceries. "Welcome home." I walked back slowly, letting the morning air wash over me. The town square had a farmer's market setting up, tables of vegetables and honey and handmade crafts. Normal people living normal lives, unimpressed by designer labels and social hierarchies. The cottage gardens needed work. I spent the afternoon pulling weeds, cutting back the roses that had grown wild. My hands blistered. My back ached. It was the most honest work I'd done in years. As evening approached, I finally turned on my phone. The messages came flooding in, a digital avalanche of panic, anger, confusion, and disappointment. My mother's voicemails progressed from worried to furious. My father's texts were curt. "Call immediately." Damien had sent only one message. "I don't understand." Neither did I, really. How could I explain that I'd felt myself disappearing, becoming a beautiful ghost in my own life? Emma's messages were different. "Are you safe? Just tell me you're safe. I won't tell anyone." I texted back. "I'm safe. I'm sorry. I needed to breathe." Her response came within seconds. "Everyone's looking for you. They think you had a breakdown. Your parents hired a private investigator." Of course they did. I turned the phone off again. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea wrapped in one of my grandmother's quilts. The forest beyond the cottage was alive with sounds. Crickets, owls, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush. And again, that wolf howl, closer than it had been the night before. I should go inside, I thought. Lock the doors. Be sensible. But I stayed, drawn by something I couldn't name. The howl came again, and this time it sounded less lonely. This time it sounded like a call. Movement at the edge of the garden. My breath caught. A wolf emerged from the shadows, massive, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb the moonlight. Its eyes caught the porch light, reflecting gold and ancient. It shouldn't be here, I thought distantly. Wolves didn't come this close to human habitation. We stared at each other across the overgrown garden. I should be terrified. Every survival instinct should be screaming at me to run, to hide, to make myself small and invisible. Instead, I felt strangely calm. The wolf's gaze held something that wasn't quite animal, something too intelligent, too assessing. It tilted its head, studying me the way a person might study a puzzle. "Hello," I whispered, feeling foolish. The wolf's ears pricked forward. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, deliberately, it sat. Like a dog obeying a command, except there was nothing domesticated about this creature. It sat and watched me, and I watched it back, and something passed between us in that silence. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. Then it stood, turned, and melted back into the darkness. I sat there for another hour, my heart beating strangely fast, before finally going inside. The next few days fell into a rhythm. I cleaned the cottage, room by room, discovering my grandmother's life in layers. Her paintings, watercolors of the forest, the mountains, the gardens in full bloom. Her journals, filled with observations about plants and weather and the small magic of daily life. Her collection of pressed flowers, each one labeled with a date and location. I found a letter addressed to me, tucked into one of the journals, my grandmother's handwriting, shaky but determined. "Dearest Stella, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you've come to Havenbrook. I always knew you would, eventually. When the world gets too loud, when you forget who you are beneath all the expectations, come here. This place has a way of showing people their true selves. Don't be afraid of what you find, and don't be surprised if the forest calls to you. This town has its secrets, its old magic. Trust your instincts, trust the quiet voice. You're stronger than they told you. You're wilder than they wanted you to be. That's not a flaw, my darling. That's your inheritance. All my love, grandmother." I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. That afternoon, I ventured into the forest, just a short walk, following an overgrown path that my grandmother had apparently maintained. The trees were old here, oaks and pines that had stood for centuries, their branches forming a canopy that filtered the sunlight into something green and dreamlike. I found a clearing with a stream running through it, water so clear I could see every stone on the bottom. I sat on a fallen log and let the peace of the place sink into my bones. A twig snapped behind me. I turned, and there he was. Not the wolf this time, but a man. He stood at the edge of the clearing, and my first thought was that he looked like he'd been carved from the forest itself. Tall, with dark hair that fell past his shoulders, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. He wore simple clothes, dark jeans, a worn flannel shirt, but carried himself with an authority that made the casual clothing irrelevant. His eyes were the same gold I'd seen in the wolf's gaze. "You're Eleanor's granddaughter," he said. His voice was deep, with a rough edge that suggested he didn't use it often. "How does everyone know that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Small town." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile. "And you look like her. Same hair, same eyes, same stubborn set to your chin." He moved closer, each step deliberate and graceful, predatory, some part of me whispered. But I didn't feel afraid. I felt awake. "I'm Stella." "I know." He stopped a few feet away, studying me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable. "I'm Cade. I own the land that borders your grandmother's property." "The forest?" "Most of it." His gaze never left my face. "Eleanor and I had an understanding. I hope we can have the same." "What kind of understanding? Mutual respect? Privacy? The forest has its rhythms, its patterns. It's better not to interfere." There was something in the way he said it, some weight beneath the simple words. I thought of my grandmother's letter, her mention of secrets and old magic. "You were watching me," I said. "Last night on my porch." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe that I'd figured it out. "Yes." "Why?" "To make sure you were safe." He tilted his head, the gesture eerily similar to the wolf's. "You ran away from something. People who run are often followed." My chest tightened. "How did you know I ran?" "The same way I know you're still running even now. It's in the way you hold yourself, like you're ready to bolt at any second." His voice softened slightly. "Whatever you're running from, it hasn't found you here yet, but it will look. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Are you going to tell them where I am?" "No," The word was firm, final. Havenbrook protects its own. Eleanor was ours, which makes you ours. But you should know what you're walking into. What do you mean? He looked away for the first time, his gaze sweeping the forest. When he looked back, there was something raw in his expression, something that made him seem less controlled, more real. This town isn't what it appears to be. There are things here that the outside world doesn't understand, wouldn't believe. Your grandmother knew. She kept our secrets, and we kept hers. He paused. If you stay, you'll learn those secrets too. And once you know, you can't unknow. You can't go back to seeing the world the way you did before. My heart was racing now, but not from fear, from excitement, from possibility. All my life I'd been told to be careful, to be sensible, to stay within the lines, and look where that had gotten me, standing at an altar in a dress that itched, promising forever to a man I didn't love. I want to know, I said. Cade smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed his face from severe to something almost beautiful. I thought you might say that. He turned to leave, then paused. There's a gathering tonight, town council meeting at the community center, 7 o'clock. Come if you want to understand what you've inherited. Will you be there? Yes. His eyes held mine. I'm the alpha. He walked away before I could ask what that meant, disappearing into the forest as silently as he'd appeared. I sat there by the stream for a long time, my grandmother's words echoing in my mind. Don't be surprised if the forest calls to you. It wasn't just calling anymore. It was singing. The community center was a modest building on the edge of town, wood-sided and warm-lit, with trucks and cars parked haphazardly around it. I arrived at 10 minutes past 7, my nerves making me second-guess every decision. I'd changed 3 times, finally settling on jeans and a simple green sweater, my own clothes, retrieved from the suitcase I'd packed for what was supposed to be my honeymoon. The honeymoon I'd never take, with a man I'd left standing at an altar. I pushed the thought away and opened the door. The room fell silent. About 40 people sat in folding chairs arranged in loose rows, all of them turning to look at me. I recognized Margaret from the bakery, the man who'd sold me apples at the farmer's market, the woman who ran the small bookstore on Main Street. Familiar faces from my few days in town, and others I'd never seen before. And at the front of the room, leaning against a table with his arms crossed, was Cade. He looked different here, more formal somehow, despite wearing the same type of casual clothes. There was an authority in the way he held himself, in the way every person in the room seemed oriented toward him like flowers toward the sun. Eleanor's granddaughter, an elderly man said, standing. He had a weathered face and kind eyes. We've been hoping you'd come. I'm Thomas. I was your grandmother's friend for over 40 years. Stella, I managed, my voice smaller than I'd intended. I'm sorry I'm late. You're right on time, Cade said, his gold eyes finding mine across the room. We were just about to begin. Please, sit. I found an empty chair near the back, hyper-aware of the attention on me. A woman about my age with auburn hair and a warm smile leaned over. I'm Riley, she whispered. Don't look so terrified. We don't bite. She paused, grinning. Well, most of us don't. Before I could process that odd comment, Cade began speaking. Most of you know why Stella is here, he said, his voice carrying easily through the room. Eleanor left her the cottage, her land, her legacy. What Stella doesn't know yet is what that legacy actually means. He looked directly at me. Your grandmother was human, Stella. But she was also our historian, our record keeper, our bridge to the outside world when we needed one. She kept our secrets for decades, and in return, we protected her, respected her, trusted her. Secrets, I repeated, my mouth dry. Cade's expression was serious. Havenbrook isn't a normal town. It never has been. We've existed here for over 200 years, hidden in plain sight, living quietly among humans who either don't notice what we are or choose not to look too closely. The woman next to Riley, older, with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp features, stood up. We're werewolves, dear. All of us in this room except Margaret and Thomas and a handful of others. Your grandmother knew, and now you need to know too. The words hung in the air. Werewolves. I should laugh. I should stand up and leave, call someone, report a town full of delusional people playing at fantasy. But I thought of the wolf on my porch, of Cade appearing in the forest with those same gold eyes, of my grandmother's letter about old magic and secrets. "Prove it," I heard myself say. The silver-haired woman smiled approvingly. "She has Eleanor's spine. Good." She looked at Cade. "May I?" He nodded. What happened next would have sent me screaming a week ago. The woman's form blurred, shifted. It wasn't dramatic or violent like in movies, but smooth and natural, like water changing shape. Where she'd stood, a wolf now sat, coat the same silver-streaked dark as her hair had been, eyes bright with intelligence. Then she shifted back, just as smoothly, standing there in the same clothes as if nothing impossible had just occurred. "Any questions?" she asked mildly. I couldn't speak. My mind was reeling, trying to reconcile everything I thought I knew about the world with what I'd just witnessed. Riley touched my arm gently. "Breathe, Stella. Just breathe." I breathed. "Why tell me?" I finally managed. "Why not just let me live in the cottage and never know? Because you inherited more than just property," Cade said, moving closer. "Your grandmother's role in this community was important. She documented our history, mediated conflicts with the human world, helped us maintain our secret while also ensuring we didn't become isolated or insular. We need someone to fill that role." "And you think that's me?" I let out a shaky laugh. "I'm nobody. I'm just a woman who ran away from her own wedding because she was too much of a coward to say no in the first place." The words came out harsher than I'd intended, raw and honest. Cade's expression softened. "You're a woman who found the courage to choose herself over everyone else's expectations. That's not cowardice, Stella. That's bravery." Something in my chest cracked open at those words, at the gentleness in his voice. Thomas stood again. "No one is asking you to decide tonight. Take your time. Learn about us. Let us learn about you. But know that Havenbrook protects its own, and Eleanor made you one of ours the day she left you that cottage." "What does the alpha mean?" I asked, looking at Cade. "You said you were the alpha. I lead the pack," he explained. "Make decisions that affect the community, mediate disputes, protect our territory from outside threats. It's a position that's held through strength and earned through trust." Riley leaned closer. "He's also disgustingly noble and takes everything way too seriously," she said in a stage whisper. "But we love him anyway." A few people laughed. The tension in the room eased slightly. Cade shot Riley a look that might have been fond exasperation. "This is my sister, in case that wasn't obvious. She's second in the pack and enjoys making my life difficult." "It's a gift," Riley said cheerfully. She turned to me. "You should come to dinner tomorrow. Meet some of us in a less formal setting. I promise we're not nearly as intimidating when we're not in official council mode." Before I could answer, the door burst open. A young man stumbled in, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, his shirt torn. "We've got a problem," he gasped. "Hunters, 3 of them, setting traps on the eastern boundary." The room erupted. Cade's entire demeanor changed, the approachable man vanishing, replaced by something fierce and commanding. "How long ago?" 20 minutes. I would have been here sooner, but..." The young man swayed. Riley was already moving, catching him before he fell. "Dante, you idiot. You shouldn't have run this far injured." Cade's voice cut through the chaos. "Riley, take care of Dante. Marcus, Vincent, Aaron, with me. Everyone else, stay here and stay calm. This might be nothing, or it might be the beginning of something bigger." He was heading for the door when I found myself standing, my voice surprising me with its steadiness. "What can I do?" Cade paused, looking back at me. For a moment, I saw surprise flash across his face, then something that might have been respect. "Stay here, stay safe. That's what you can do." Then he was gone, taking several others with him, leaving the remaining pack members anxious and tense. Margaret appeared at my side. "Come on, dear. Let's make coffee. People will need it." I followed her to the small kitchen area, grateful for something to do with my hands. As I filled the ancient coffee maker, I watched Riley tend to Dante's wounds with practiced efficiency, watched Thomas quietly reassure a worried-looking elderly woman. Watched the pack members draw together in their fear and concern. This was a family. Unconventional, impossible, but real. Hunters, I said quietly to Margaret. Why would hunters want to hurt them? Margaret's expression darkened. There are people who know what we are. Most leave us alone. We're careful, we don't cause trouble, we live quietly. But some see us as monsters, as things to be eliminated. They set traps, use silver bullets, try to wipe us out. She poured sugar into a mug. Your grandmother helped us navigate those situations more than once. Talked down angry humans, created alibis, even confronted hunters when necessary. She confronted hunters? Your grandmother was a fierce woman, Stella. She might have been human, but she had the heart of a wolf. Margaret smiled sadly. She once told a hunter that if he wanted to hurt her pack, he'd have to go through her first. And she meant it. I thought of the woman I'd known, gentle with her gardens, soft-spoken and kind, and I realized I'd only seen one side of her. The side she'd shown to the world that expected women to be small and decorative. An hour passed, then another. The coffee went cold, was remade. People talked in low voices, speculating, worrying. Riley paced like a caged animal. Finally, the door opened. Cade walked in, followed by his team. He was uninjured, but there was a tension in his shoulders that spoke of danger narrowly avoided. We found the traps, removed them. The hunters were gone, but they left equipment behind. Professional grade, expensive. They'll be back. How many traps? Thomas asked. 8, all set with silver, all designed to maim or kill. Cade's jaw tightened. They know we're here. This isn't random. Someone gave them information. A murmur of alarm rippled through the room. We increase patrols, Cade continued. No one goes into the forest alone until we know more, and we find out who's selling information about us. His eyes swept the room. This pack has survived for 2 centuries. Because we're careful and we're loyal, we'll survive this too. His gaze found mine across the room, held it for a long moment. Something passed between us, an understanding maybe, or a question. Then Riley was pulling me aside. You should go home, she said gently. Get some rest. This is a lot for one night. She was right. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, my mind still trying to process everything I'd learned. But as I headed for the door, Cade intercepted me. I'll walk you home. That's not necessary. It is. His tone left no room for argument. There are hunters in the forest. You're not walking alone in the dark. We stepped out into the cool night air. The walk to my cottage would take 15 minutes through the quiet streets of Havenbrook. For the first few minutes, we walked in silence. Then Cade spoke. You didn't have to offer to help tonight. You're my neighbors, my grandmother's friends. Of course I had to help. Most humans, when they learn what we are, run, or try to exploit us, or panic. He glanced at me. You did none of those things. I ran away from my wedding, I said quietly. I think I'm done running from scary things. Why did you run? The question was soft, genuinely curious. I'd never said it out loud before, because I was becoming invisible, because everyone in my life had decided who I should be, and I was disappearing into that person, and she wasn't me at all. I wrapped my arms around myself. I stood there in that bridal suite, and I realized that if I went through with it, I'd wake up 20 years later and not recognize myself in the mirror. So you chose yourself. I chose to breathe, I corrected. I don't know if it was the right choice. I hurt people. My ex-fiancé, my parents, everyone who'd invested in that version of me. We'd reached my cottage. The porch light cast warm shadows across the overgrown garden. Cade turned to face me fully. Stella, living authentically is never the wrong choice. It might be the harder choice, but not the wrong one. Standing there in the moonlight, I saw something in his expression that made my breath catch. Loneliness. Bone deep and ancient, carefully hidden behind strength and authority. Why haven't you shifted? I asked suddenly. Everyone else did to show me, but not you. His smile was sad. Because once you see me that way, you can't unsee it. And I wanted you to know me as a man first, before you knew me as a monster. You're not a monster. You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. Maybe not. I met his eyes. But my grandmother trusted you, and I trust her judgment. Something fierce and bright flashed across his face. For a moment, I thought he might say something, might close the distance between us, but then he stepped back, putting space between us again. "Lock your doors tonight," he said. "And if you hear anything unusual, call me." He pressed a slip of paper into my hand, a phone number written in dark, angular handwriting. "Will you patrol?" "All night." He glanced at the forest. "I don't sleep much anyway." He left me there, walking back toward town with that predatory grace. I watched until he disappeared into the darkness, then went inside, my mind full of impossible things. Werewolves. Hunters. A grandmother who'd been braver than I'd ever known. And an alpha with gold eyes and a loneliness that echoed my own. I fell asleep that night thinking not of the wedding I'd fled, but of the life I might be building, a life that was wholly, completely mine. I woke to the smell of smoke, not the pleasant wood smoke of a fireplace, but something acrid and wrong. I stumbled out of bed, heart pounding, and looked out the window. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, and there, at the edge of the forest, thin trails of smoke rose into the morning air. I grabbed my phone, found Cade's number, called. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "Smoke. At the forest edge, near the eastern boundary of my property. Stay inside. Lock the doors." His voice was sharp with command. "I'm coming." He arrived within minutes, too quickly for him to have driven from wherever he'd been. He must have been close, must have been patrolling as he'd said. 2 others were with him, a tall man with dark skin and serious eyes, and Riley, her auburn hair pulled back, her expression grim. "Marcus smelled it an hour ago," Cade said, gesturing to the tall man. "Someone set fires at 3 different points along the boundary. Small ones, controlled. They're sending a message." "What message?" I asked. "That they know where we live, that they can reach us whenever they want." Riley's hands clenched into fists. "It's psychological warfare." We walked to the smoke source, carefully, Cade keeping me behind him despite my protests. The fire had been set in a small clearing, already burning itself out. But what made my stomach turn was what surrounded it. Photographs. Dozens of them, tacked to trees, scattered on the ground. Photographs of pack members, going about their daily lives, shopping, working, walking through town. Someone had been watching them, documenting them, and in the center of the clearing, pinned to a tree with a silver knife, was a photograph of me. Taken yesterday, walking from the community center back to my cottage with Cade beside me. I felt the blood drain from my face. "They know about you now," Marcus said quietly. "They think you're one of us. Or they know she's important to us, which makes her a target either way," Riley added, her voice tight with anger. Cade pulled the photograph down, his expression dark as a thunderstorm. "Get back to the house. All of you. Now." We obeyed without question. Once inside the cottage, Cade pulled out his phone, made several calls in rapid succession. Within 20 minutes, my small living room was full of people. Thomas arrived with Margaret. Vincent, a stocky man in his 50s with silver-shot hair, came with his wife, Catherine, the woman who'd shifted for me last night. And others, each one looking worried and angry in equal measure. "They've escalated faster than I expected," Thomas said, studying the photographs Cade had collected. "This isn't just hunters passing through. This is organized." "Someone's funding them," Vincent added. "Professional surveillance, coordinated attacks, high-grade silver weapons. This takes money and planning." I sat on my grandmother's old couch, feeling surreal. 3 days ago, I'd been preparing to marry a man I didn't love in a world I thought I understood. Now I was in the middle of something that sounded like a plot from a fantasy novel. Except it was terrifyingly real. "Why now?" I asked. "If you've been here for 200 years without major problems, why would hunters suddenly organize against you?" The room fell silent. Cade looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Because I refused a political alliance," he said finally. 3 months ago, the alpha of the Western Pack proposed a union, his daughter and me. It would have joined our territories, made us the largest werewolf pack in the region. "You said no," I guessed. "I said no." His jaw tightened. Because the Western pack has different values than we do. They believe in dominance over humans, in using our strength to take what we want. They've been involved in criminal enterprises, territorial violence. I won't tie my pack to that, no matter how advantageous the alliance might be politically. Riley leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The Western Alpha didn't take rejection well. He's been looking for ways to undermine Cade's authority, to make him look weak. What better way than to bring hunters down on us? Force Cade to either fight or accept his help, and his terms. That's quite a leap, Margaret said carefully. We don't have proof it's him. Who else has the resources and the motivation? Catherine countered. And the timing is too convenient. He makes his offer, Cade refuses, and suddenly we have organized hunters in our forest? The discussion devolved into speculation and argument. I watched Cade through it all, the way he listened to each person, considered each opinion, even when they disagreed with him. This was leadership, I realized, not commanding through fear, but guiding through respect. Eventually, people began to leave, returning to their own preparations and concerns. Riley squeezed my shoulder as she passed. You holding up okay? I don't know, I admitted. This is all so far outside anything I've experienced. Yeah, well, welcome to the pack. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. Cade needs someone who sees him as more than just the alpha. Someone who reminds him he's allowed to be human too. She paused. Well, you know what I mean. After she left, only Cade and I remained. He stood by the window, staring out at the forest, tension in every line of his body. You should leave, he said without turning around. Go back to the city, to your real life. This isn't your fight. My real life? I laughed without humor. I don't have a real life anymore. I destroyed it when I ran away, and even if I did, I wouldn't leave. Now he turned, surprise flickering across his face. Why not? Because my grandmother wouldn't have. I stood, crossing to him. Because these people, your people, took me in without question, protected me without asking for anything in return. Because someone needs to document what's happening. And apparently that's supposed to be my job now. I met his eyes. And because you're facing this alone. And I know what that feels like. I'm not alone. I have the pack. You're their leader. They need you to be strong, to have answers, to never show fear or doubt. I thought of my own life, the weight of expectations. But who do you get to be human with, Cade? Who do you trust with your weaknesses? The question hung between us. His expression shifted, something raw and vulnerable breaking through his careful control. I can't afford weakness, he said quietly. Not as alpha. The moment I show vulnerability, someone will exploit it. Someone will challenge me, or the pack will lose faith, or they'll see that you're real. I interrupted. That you carry burdens and feel fear and struggle with impossible choices just like they do. That might not make you seem weaker, Cade. It might make them love you more. He stared at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. Then, slowly, he smiled. Not the polite smile he'd shown me before, but something genuine and startled and a little bit broken. You're very strange, Stella Ashford. I ran away from my own wedding in a stolen car wearing a dress that cost more than some people's cars. Strange is pretty much my baseline now. He laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rusty as if he didn't do it often. And standing there in my grandmother's living room, with danger lurking in the forest and an impossible situation surrounding us, I felt something shift between us. Some barrier coming down, some possibility opening up. Stay here today, he said. I'll have someone patrol nearby. Tomorrow, if you still want to help, I'll take you to see the pack's archives. Your grandmother's records. You should know what you're inheriting. I'd like that. He moved toward the door, then paused. Stella, thank you. For not running. For staying. I told you, I said softly. I'm done running from scary things. After he left, I spent the day going through my grandmother's papers more thoroughly. I found letters from pack members, thanking her for various interventions, helping a young werewolf get into college without questions about his unusual background, mediating a property dispute, even corresponding with a lawyer about discrimination cases. She'd been more than a historian. She'd been an advocate, a protector, a bridge between two worlds. Could I do the same? I was so different from her, less confident, less certain, less brave. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I didn't have to be her. Maybe I just had to be myself, and let that be enough. That evening, Riley showed up with dinner, homemade lasagna and salad and fresh bread. "Thought you might not feel like cooking," she said, breezing in without waiting for an invitation. We ate together on the porch as the sun set, and Riley told me stories about the pack. About Dante, the young man who'd been injured, how he was impulsive and brave and terrible at following rules. About Marcus, who was steady and thoughtful and wrote poetry in secret. About her own struggles, growing up as the Alpha's sister, always in Cade's shadow but also his fiercest protector. "He's been alone too long," she said, picking at her bread, "since he became Alpha at 22. That's 10 years now. He's held himself apart. Can't show weakness, can't have favorites. Can't fall in love because that would create vulnerability." She looked at me pointedly. "But I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." My heart stuttered. "Riley, I'm not asking you to fall in love with him or anything dramatic like that," she interrupted. "I'm just saying, maybe you're both exactly what the other needs. Someone who understands what it's like to be trapped by other people's expectations. Someone who knows the cost of choosing yourself." After she left, I sat on the porch long into the night, thinking about her words. Thinking about gold eyes and careful control, and the loneliness I'd seen beneath Cade's strength. The moon rose, full and bright. Somewhere in the forest, a wolf howled, the sound both mournful and beautiful, and I realized that for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next morning, Cade arrived as promised. He drove us to what looked like an old church on the outskirts of town, stone walls covered in ivy, stained glass windows that caught the morning light. "The archives are in the basement," he explained, unlocking a heavy wooden door. "We converted this building 50 years ago. It's protected, warded against intrusions." The basement was larger than I'd expected, with climate-controlled rooms housing shelves of books, boxes of documents, even some modern filing cabinets. My grandmother's handwriting was everywhere. Careful labels, detailed notes, photographs organized by date and event. She documented everything. I breathed, running my fingers along the spines of journals. Births, deaths, territory disputes, interactions with humans. 200 years of pack history, Cade said. "Your grandmother spent 40 years adding to it, organizing it, preserving it. It's irreplaceable." I pulled out a journal from 20 years ago, opened it randomly. My grandmother's voice came through in the neat handwriting. Today, Vincent's daughter had her first shift. She was frightened, but her family surrounded her with love and patience. This is what we are. Not monsters, but a family caring for its own. Tears stung my eyes. "She loved you," I said to Cade. "All of you. This isn't just history, it's love letters." He stood close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. When I looked up, his expression was soft, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "She believed we deserved to be remembered as more than monsters or myths," he said quietly. "She gave us dignity, legacy, proof that we existed, that we mattered. You do matter." The words came out fierce, certain. "All of you. And I'll make sure the world knows it if you'll let me." His hand came up, almost touching my face, then fell away. "You say things like that so easily. Like you haven't spent your whole life being told to be smaller, quieter, less." "Maybe I'm tired of being smaller." I held his gaze. "Maybe I want to be exactly as loud and inconvenient and passionate as I actually am." The air between us felt charged, electric. Cade's eyes darkened, his control visibly fraying. "Stella," he said, his voice rough, "if you keep looking at me like that..." The door at the top of the stairs burst open. Marcus appeared, breathing hard. "Cade, we've got a situation." The Western Alpha just arrived at the town border with 20 of his pack members. He's demanding to speak with you. The moment shattered. Cade's expression shifted instantly. From vulnerable to commanding. From man to alpha. How long ago? 10 minutes. Vincent is stalling, but we need you there. Cade looked at me. Conflict clear on his face. Stay here. You'll be safe in the archives. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. If the Western Alpha sees you, then he sees me. I lifted my chin, channeling every ounce of my grandmother's courage. I'm part of this pack now, remember? Whatever happens, I face it with you. For a long moment, Cade just looked at me. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. Fierce and proud and almost wolfish. All right, he said. But you stay close to me. And if I tell you to run, you run. Agreed? Agreed. We drove fast through Havenbrook's quiet streets, Marcus following in his own truck. As we approached the town square, I saw them. 20 wolves in human form, clustered around a man who could only be the Western Alpha. He was tall, powerfully built, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He stood like someone accustomed to obedience, to fear, and when he saw Cade approaching with me at his side, his smile was sharp as broken glass. Well, he said, his voice carrying across the square. This just got interesting. The Western Alpha's name was Grayson Steele, and everything about him was calculated to intimidate. He wore his authority like armor, his pack arrayed behind him in a show of force that made Havenbrook's smaller numbers seem almost quaint by comparison. But Cade didn't flinch. He walked into the town square with the same quiet confidence I'd seen in him from the beginning, and I stayed at his side despite every instinct screaming at me to hide. Grayson, Cade said, his voice neutral, you're outside your territory. Am I? Grayson's smile widened. I was under the impression that unclaimed land belongs to whoever is strong enough to take it, and Havenbrook seems vulnerable lately. The pack members who'd gathered bristled. Vincent moved closer, Catherine at his side. Riley appeared from somewhere, positioning herself on Cade's other side. Marcus, Thomas, even young Dante, they all came, forming a protective circle. Our land is claimed and has been for 2 centuries, Cade replied evenly. We have no quarrel with you, Grayson. There's no need for this show of force. No need? Grayson's gaze swept dismissively over Havenbrook's defenders, then landed on me with interest that made my skin crawl. I heard you'd taken in a human. How progressive of you. Though I wonder if she understands what she's walked into. I understand perfectly, I said before I could stop myself. Every eye turned to me. Cade's hand touched my elbow, a warning, or maybe support. Grayson studied me with the intensity of a predator assessing prey. Do you? Do you understand that this pack is dying? That their numbers dwindle year after year because their alpha is too soft, too concerned with human morality to do what's necessary for survival? I understand that this pack has survived for 200 years by choosing community over conquest. I shot back, my grandmother's courage flowing through me. By building relationships instead of burning bridges, by being protectors instead of predators. A dangerous silence fell. Then Grayson laughed, cold and sharp. She has spirit. I'll give you that, Cade. Though I'm curious why you'd risk a human's life by bringing her to a meeting between alphas. Unless... His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Unless she means something to you. How fascinating. Stella is under my protection, Cade said, his voice dropping into a register that raised the hair on my arms. Touch her, threaten her, even look at her wrong, and you'll learn exactly how soft I am. The air crackled with tension. Grayson's pack shifted restlessly, responding to the challenge in Cade's tone. I didn't come here to fight, Grayson said, though his expression suggested otherwise. I came to offer assistance. These hunters plaguing your territory. They're a problem I can solve. My resources, my connections, my pack's strength combined with yours. All you have to do is accept the alliance I offered months ago. And if I refuse again, then I stop preventing the hunters from finding you. Grayson's mask of civility dropped. You think this infestation happened naturally? I've been holding them back, Cade. 1 word from me, and 100 hunters descend on Havenbrook. But marry your pack to mine, accept my daughter as your mate, and I'll ensure your people's safety. The words hit like a physical blow. Riley sucked in a breath. Vincent cursed under his breath. "You brought the hunters here," Cade said slowly, dangerously. "You put my pack at risk, endangered innocent lives, all to force my hand? I prefer to call it motivation." Grayson shrugged. "You have 48 hours to decide. Accept the alliance or face the consequences." He turned to leave, his pack moving with him, but at the edge of the square he paused. "Oh, and Cade, your little human might want to check her old life. I hear her abandoned fiancé hired investigators to find her. Wouldn't it be unfortunate if they learned where she was? If they brought media attention, curious eyes, questions about the strange little town she disappeared into? Then he was gone, leaving behind the stench of threat and manipulation. The square erupted in angry voices, pack members shouting over each other, fear and rage mixing into chaos. But Cade stood silent, his expression locked down tight. "Everyone go home," he said quietly. The authority in his voice cut through the noise. People hesitated, then began to disperse, though Riley and the senior pack members lingered. "We can't give in to this," Vincent said urgently. "If we accept his terms, I know what it means," Cade interrupted. "It means losing everything that makes us who we are. But I also won't sacrifice this pack's safety for my pride." "It's not pride," Catherine argued. "It's principle. The Western pack is corrupt, violent. An alliance would destroy us from the inside." They argued back and forth while I stood there, my mind racing. Grayson had threatened to expose me, to bring investigators and media attention to Havenbrook. He'd weaponized my past, my mistakes, against people I'd come to care about. "There has to be another way," I said. They all looked at me. "What if we expose him first?" I continued, the idea forming as I spoke. "He admitted to orchestrating the hunter attacks. That's a crime against his own kind, isn't it? If other packs knew what he'd done, they'd turn on him." "We'd need proof," Thomas said thoughtfully, "and witnesses. Other alphas who'd be willing to stand against him." "Your grandmother had contacts," Marcus added. "Other humans who knew about werewolves, who'd helped packs in the past. Legal experts, mediators, maybe they could help." Cade was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "This isn't your responsibility, Stella. You shouldn't have to—" "Stop," I interrupted. "Stop trying to protect me from my own choices. I'm here because I want to be. I'm involved because I choose to be. And I'm not going to stand by while someone threatens the people I care about." The words hung in the air. The people I care about, including him. Especially him. Something fierce and bright flashed in Cade's eyes. "All right," he said, "then we fight back. But we do it smart." The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. I dove into my grandmother's archives, finding names and contact information for people she'd worked with over the years. A lawyer in Portland who specialized in supernatural cases. A journalist who'd agreed to keep werewolf secrets in exchange for other stories. A network of humans who acted as allies and advocates. I called them all, explained the situation, asked for help, and one by one, they agreed. Meanwhile, Cade reached out to other alphas, smaller packs who'd felt Grayson's pressure, who'd been bullied or threatened but had been too afraid to speak up. He built a coalition, careful and quiet, preparing to present evidence of Grayson's crimes to the Council of Alphas, an inter-pack governing body that rarely intervened, but had the authority to strip an alpha of his position. Riley coordinated patrols, doubling security around Havenbrook's borders. Marcus and Vincent worked on documenting everything: the traps, the fires, the photographs, building a case. And through it all, I worked beside them, writing testimonies, organizing evidence, making connections, being useful in a way I'd never been in my old life, where my role had been decorative rather than functional. On the second night, Cade found me in the archives at 2 a.m, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. "You should rest," he said gently. "So should you." I rubbed my eyes, but we're both too stubborn. He smiled, settling into the chair beside me. For a moment, we just sat in comfortable silence. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Anything. Do you regret it? Running from your wedding, ending up here, in the middle of all this chaos." I thought about it honestly. Thought about Damien, my parents, the life I'd left behind, the shame and gossip and disappointment. No, I said, I don't regret it at all. That life was killing me slowly, making me smaller and quieter until there'd be nothing left. This life, I gestured at the archives, at the evidence of community and struggle and fierce loyalty. This life makes me feel alive. Even with the danger, the impossibility, especially with that, I turned to face him fully. Cade, for the first time in my life, I'm doing something that matters, something real. I'm not just a pretty accessory or a good match or a disappointment to my parents. I'm actually useful, actually needed. You're more than useful, Stella. His voice was low, intense. You're remarkable. In 3 days, you've done what I couldn't do in months. Built bridges, found allies, created hope. The pack looks at you and sees Eleanor's courage and wisdom, but I look at you and see someone entirely yourself. Someone brave enough to choose her own path, even when it's terrifying. My breath caught. The space between us felt charged, electric. I see the same thing when I look at you, I whispered, someone carrying impossible weight with grace. Someone who chooses compassion over conquest, community over power. You're not just an alpha, Cade. You're a good man. His hand came up, cupping my face with a gentleness that made my heart ache. I don't know what I did to deserve you walking into my life, he said. But I'm grateful for it. For you. Cade. He kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, as if he was afraid I might pull away, but I didn't. I leaned into him, into this impossible connection between us, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and honest and full of hope. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cade rested his forehead against mine. I can't promise you easy, he said. I can't promise you normal or safe or anything resembling the life you left behind. Good, I replied, smiling, because I don't want easy or normal. I want real. I want this. Even if I'm a werewolf, even with all the complications that brings. Especially because of that, I kissed him again, brief and fierce. You're not a complication, Cade. You're the best thing I never knew I was looking for. When the 48 hours were up, Grayson returned. But this time, he wasn't alone. 4 other alphas arrived with him, responding to Cade's calls. They stood in Havenbrook's town square, leaders from across the region, each representing their own pack's interests. And behind them, documenting everything, was the journalist my grandmother had worked with. A woman named Sarah Chen, who'd been waiting 20 years for a story like this. What is this? Grayson demanded, his confidence faltering as he recognized the other alphas. This is accountability, Cade said. He held up a folder thick with evidence. You orchestrated hunter attacks against my pack to force a political alliance. You endangered innocent lives, both werewolf and human, for personal gain. You've extorted, threatened, and manipulated, and you've done it all assuming no one would stand against you. You have no proof. We have testimony from 3 packs you've threatened, Marcus interrupted, stepping forward. We have documented evidence of your involvement with hunter organizations. We have records of payments made to known werewolf hunters. And we have your own confession, witnessed by over 30 pack members, that you've been holding back hunters from attacking Havenbrook. Grayson's face went pale, then red with rage. You can't do this. I'm an alpha. So am I, said a woman stepping forward, Alpha Reyna from the Northern Pack. And you disgust me. Using hunters against our own kind? That's not leadership. That's betrayal. One by one, the other alphas agreed. The vote was unanimous. Grayson Steele was stripped of his position. His pack would be reorganized under new leadership, monitored to ensure the corruption was rooted out. Grayson left in fury, but he left defeated, and Havenbrook was safe. 3 months later, I stood in my grandmother's garden, no longer overgrown, but carefully tended, full of roses and wildflowers and herbs. The cottage had become truly mine, filled with both her memory and my own growing collection of books, artwork, and evidence of a life fully lived. I'd officially taken on my grandmother's role as pack historian and human liaison. The archives were being digitized, preserved, made accessible. I was writing a comprehensive history of werewolves in America, not for publication, but for the packs themselves, their story, told with dignity and truth. My parents had stopped calling after the first month, unable to comprehend my choices. Damien had sent one final message. "I hope you find what you're looking for." I'd replied simply, "I already have." The scandal had died down. I was yesterday's news, replaced by fresh gossip and drama. And I'd never been happier. Deep thoughts? Cade's voice came from behind me. I turned, smiling. He looked relaxed in a way he hadn't 3 months ago. Still strong, still authoritative, but no longer carrying the weight of the world alone. "Just thinking about how strange life is," I said, as he wrapped his arms around me. A few months ago, I was standing in a bridal suite, feeling like I was suffocating. Now I'm here, in love with a werewolf, living in a magical town, doing work that actually matters. Any regrets? He kissed my temple. Not a single one. Riley appeared around the corner of the cottage, followed by Dante, Marcus, and several other pack members. They were carrying food, drinks, blankets, preparing for the monthly pack gathering we held in my grandmother's garden. "Stop being disgustingly romantic and come help," Riley called, grinning. "We have 40 people coming for dinner, and Dante somehow forgot the potato salad." "I didn't forget it," Dante protested. "I just got distracted by being Dante," Marcus finished dryly. "It's a full-time occupation," I laughed, feeling the warmth of belonging settle deep in my bones. This was family. Chosen, complicated, unconventional, and absolutely perfect. As evening fell and the garden filled with people, I caught Cade watching me from across the yard. Our eyes met, and he smiled. Not the careful, controlled expression he showed the world, but the genuine, soft smile he saved for me. I touched my grandmother's locket, hidden beneath my shirt. "Trust the quiet voice," she'd written. That quiet voice had led me here, to this impossible, wonderful life. I'd left the altar. I'd fled to the countryside, and the Alpha King had followed. But more importantly, I'd followed my own heart. I'd chosen courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, love over expectation, and in doing so, I'd found everything I never knew I needed. The moon rose over Heavenbrook, full and bright. Somewhere in the forest, wolves howled, a song of pack, of family, of home. And I howled back, my human voice joining their ancient chorus, marking my place among them. I was Stella Ashford, runaway bride, pack historian, lover of a werewolf alpha, and finally, completely, wholly myself. And that was more than enough. It was everything.